Have you ever asked questions like, why does God allow me to suffer? Why doesn't He answer my prayers? Or why did God allow my loved one to die? All of us have questions and doubts sometimes toward God. It's normal from time to time. As we celebrate this very special Easter season, today we're talking honestly about our doubts and how we can learn to overcome any doubt in our lives. And Jesus rose again and presented Himself to His disciples, but Thomas wasn't there. And when the disciples told Thomas that they had seen Jesus, he just said, well, I don't believe. I just don't believe. Unless I see Him and experience it for myself and touch His body, I will not believe. And then Jesus later said to him, you know, it's a good thing that you've believed, Thomas, having seen me, but blessed are those who have not seen and yet believed. And so He has this label. I hope it's not an eternal label. It's certainly a label for our sake, Doubting Thomas. And that's the way we know Him. Now here's the good news. He resolved his doubts. He overcame his doubts. And Thomas went to India, and he preached the gospel in India. And there are many believers there, and there's a shrine to Thomas in India, and he was ultimately martyred by spears for his faith there. And so he didn't remain a doubter. He was a great man of faith, and he changed nations through his ministry. But it began with doubt, and he's well known for this. But here's what I want to say to all of us. All the other disciples doubted too. It wasn't just Thomas. This is John's gospel, and John mentions Thomas more than the other writers of the gospels. But listen to what Luke says about Easter Sunday. Now, as they said these things, Jesus stood in the midst of them and said to them, peace be to you. But they were terrified and frightened and supposed they had seen a spirit. And He said to them, why are you troubled, and why do doubts arise in your hearts? Behold my hand and my feet, that it is I myself. Handle me and see, for a spirit does not have flesh and bones, as you see I have. When He had said this, He showed them His hands and His feet. All the disciples doubted. It wasn't just Thomas. This is the account of when Jesus appeared to them at first, and they were all terrified and frightened. And Jesus said, why do you doubt? Come and handle me. Just the way that Thomas had to handle Jesus before he believed, the other disciples did too. In Matthew 28, after the resurrection, after Jesus had appeared to His disciples a number of times, Matthew 28:16, then the 11 disciples went away into Galilee to the mountain which Jesus had appointed for them. When they saw Him, they worshiped Him, but some doubted. Isn't that amazing? Isn't that amazing? And we would think to ourselves, if I had been there on Resurrection Sunday, if I had seen Jesus, if I had touched Jesus, it would totally resolve all my doubts, and I would have no doubts whatsoever. But it's simply not true. They were there. They handled Jesus. They saw Jesus after the resurrection. But still they doubted. But here's the truth. All of us doubt. It's a human issue. All of us have doubts, and we can resolve our doubts. And certainly the disciples resolved their doubts. But the word doubt, when the Bible uses the word doubt, it's the Greek word distazo, and it literally means two ways. And I'm standing right here in front of this wonderful group of people, and there is an aisle here, and there's an aisle here. I can see both ways. And that's what literally doubt means. Faith means there's God's way, and I believe God's way. There's only one way that I'm going to follow. I've completely resolved my doubts, and it's God's way. I just see one thing. But doubt means God says something, but people say something. God says something, but circumstances say something. God says something, but my past says something over here. The Word of God says something, but there are skeptics and doubters and unbelievers and atheists and people who refuse to believe. And so I'm standing between two ways. That's literally what doubt means, is double vision. I'm looking both ways, and because of that, I'm hesitating, and I don't have conviction. That's what doubt means, hesitation, a lack of conviction. I can't make up my mind between these two. And so Thomas was a doubter on the day of the resurrection. All the disciples went through that issue of, what am I going to do, and who am I going to believe? Many of the famous characters in the Bible that had very powerful encounters with God doubted. Abraham and Sarah. When God came to the father of the faith, that's what, rather than being known as Doubting Thomas, Abraham was known as the father of the faith. But when God came and told Abraham and Sarah that they would have a child in their old age, they doubted. They created Ishmael, and Sarah laughed. They had a hard time believing that they were going to have a child. King David doubted. When God struck Uzzah, when they were trying to bring the ark into Jerusalem, David doubted. Moses doubted. When God came and tried to take Moses and use him as the deliverer of Israel, Moses doubted. Moses doubted God, and Moses doubted himself. that it could happen. Then he went to Israel and led them out of Egypt by sign and wonder and sign and wonder and sign and wonder, and the Dead Sea or the Red Sea parting, and then God doing miracle after miracle after miracle in the wilderness, and they doubted the whole time. They never settled in their hearts that God loved them, that God believed in them, and they constantly doubted God and his word and everything that happened. And then one of the New Testament stories about doubt was Peter walking on water. And the disciples were on the Sea of Galilee, and the sea was boisterous one night, and Jesus came walking up on the water, which is something you never see happen in your life. You know, Jesus walked up on the water, and remember how terrified they were when Jesus rose from the grave. They were terrified when they saw Jesus walking on the water. But Peter said, Lord, if it's you, command me to come to you. And Jesus said, come. And Peter stepped out of the boat and began to walk on the water toward Jesus. He saw Jesus, and Jesus spoke a word, and he was walking by faith toward Jesus. And all of a sudden it says, and the sea was boisterous. Out of the corner of his eye, he watched what was happening to the sea over here. And all of a sudden, this single vision toward Jesus became distazo, double vision, and he began to sink. And Jesus reached out his hand to Peter and grabbed him and pulled him up out of the water and said, why did you distazo? Why did you have double vision, Peter? Why did you doubt? Why did you hesitate between these two when I told you exactly what I was going to do? And so people who knew Jesus and walked with Jesus and saw Jesus still doubted, because it's a part of our human condition. It's just something that we do. It's something that we need to overcome because it can create tremendous problems. But it's something that we just do. And so if you're here today and you're dealing with doubt, join the club. We deal with doubt, but we need to overcome our doubts. We need to be people of faith.
Thank you for watching Marriage Today with Jimmy and Karen. Support Marriage Today with your best gift and receive the series, The Overcoming Life. Follow your interests and get social by connecting with Jimmy and Karen and the Ministry of Marriage Today on Twitter. Looking for your next great book? Start reading instantly with Marriage Today's ebooks, now available online. Become a rock-solid partner today and equip yourself with the tools you need for a successful marriage. $14, $28, or $56 per month. Choose the partnership level that's right for you. Become a rock-solid partner today.